Hi, this is Tammy. I'm the president of Fun and Adventure at Singles Travel International. And tonight we're going to be talking about Cuba. The name of our program in December is Cigars, Salsa, and Celebrate Cuba. And I'm very excited to announce that because of the popularity of this departure, we added another one in March. So if you didn't get to travel or to sign up for the trip in December, please join us. Take a look. I'll show you at the end of tonight's presentation how to find that on the website. And we look forward to hosting you in Cuba. And yes, we are able to travel to Cuba. I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight. It's not something new. It's been possible. You just have to travel with the companies that are licensed and ready to help you comply with all of the things that you have to do to travel to Cuba. And it's not that much. There's just a couple of extra little items. And so we'll get to that. But first, I want to tell you, I love Cuba. I'm going to talk about the highlights tonight, a little bit of history, and there is so much history. We are very near. Some of us, of course, who are in the southeast section of the United States are just a hop, skip, and a jump from Cuba. We feel very connected with this tiny island country. And our country has had just an amazing and long history with Cuba. I'm going to talk about three particular periods in history tonight, just to give you an introduction. Many of us remember the Cuban Missile Crisis and the revolution. You might not have known that our interaction with Cuba goes as far back as the Spanish-American War in 1898. The Cubans were fighting the Spaniards for independence. And there was an attack on a U.S. vessel. It was called the USS Maine in the Havana Harbor. That was in February of 1898. And that was all we needed to jump in and start to support the Cubans. There were a lot of sympathizers from the United States who were already living in Cuba, and Hemingway among them, helping the Cubans to overcome the Spaniards. And we had already been doing business with the Cubans, so it was natural for us to help protect that economy. Well, when that Spanish-American War ended in December of 1898, the Paris Treaty was signed, and that is when Spain relinquished sovereignty over Cuba and ceded Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippine Islands to the United States. So that's when we acquired all of those communities and sovereign places that are under the guise of the United States even today. Not a lot of people know that Puerto Rico is the United States. Well, shortly after we won that, then we engaged in commerce with the Cubans for a very long time. And Batista was in charge. We had sugar trade with them, tobacco, oil, all kinds of flourishing businesses with Cuba. And so we were doing, we had very good relations. But of course, there was the revolution in the works. And that was in the middle of the 1950s. And I'm going to show you the photo of the fathers of the revolution, but many of you know about Castro. You've heard about Che Guevara. And of course, the third was Cienfuegos. Well, they ended up taking over on January 1st of 1959, and they turned that country of Cuba into a communist socialist regime and started to build an alliance with Russia for support, for supplies, and for philosophy. And so we, as the United States, were concerned and carefully watching what was going on there. And then, of course, a lot of us do remember the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is in 1962, with President Kennedy, and the very close call where many of us who are here in the room tonight were probably young kids, and we remember the building bomb shelters and all of the precautions that we were taking at that time. And so it was very scary. And after that event, and of course, the ousting of Bautista, the United States placed an embargo on exports to Cuba, except for food and medicine. And that has been going on ever since that time. And it was in response to Castro nationalizing all of the previously US-owned Cuban oil refineries, the sugar industry, tobacco, and everything became Cuban nationalized. And so a lot of the very first people to leave Cuba did so in the eve of the revolution, which was on January 1st of 1959. They were given some time to leave. Anybody who had affluence was given time to leave. And that's when the first wave of immigrants came to the United States from Cuba. So this is one perspective of Cuba, and you're going to learn that there are more than one. So there are some backers of Cuba and what's going on there today. Those are mainly people who are living there. And then, of course, those who have left Cuba have quite a different perspective of what's going on in Cuba. And I think you'll be able to form your own opinions once you go there and you meet the people. And I think the most incredible asset of the country of Cuba is the people. They are creative, they are resilient, they are strong, they're just beautiful. And I can't wait for you to be able to experience that firsthand for yourself. And so now, as part of the relations between our two countries, even though there is a trade embargo, which, by the way, has cost the Cuban government an estimate of $144 billion since they have not been able to trade with the United States since 1962. So it's definitely taken a toll on them, and the history of their relationships with all of, with Venezuela, with Russia, periods of strong support and then lack of. So there's definitely a really deep lack of resources for the Cuban people, and that's what's made them so resilient and so resourceful. And so you'll learn that in your visit. So using there are 12 visas that allow United States citizens to travel to Cuba. So by the way, it's our embargo against Cuba. No other country in the world has the embargo against Cuba, so they're all able to travel to Cuba. It's just our citizens that have some restrictions. So our group will be traveling on a visa called the Support of the Cuban People, and that's going to give us access to the country. And that's basically it. So I'll tell you at the end of the presentation, toward the end, what some of those fine details are, but we are able to travel to Cuba on the Support of the Cuban People. By the way, our country is very, the embargo was put in place by the office of, it's the OFAC, which is the Office of Finances here in the United States. So it's not the president that decides this. It's not necessarily our Senate that decides it. It's definitely coming out of the Office of Finances, and they are the ones that place the embargo on Cuba. So when you get there, you're going to learn a lot more than what I'm giving you tonight. And I keep alluding to that, but I just know that for those of you who are traveling to Cuba, you're going to come home with more questions than you had even before you left. It's a fascinating culture. So let's talk about some of the highlights. I know that everybody that wants to go to Cuba loves to see these classic cars. When you arrive in Havana and you go to Havana Vieja, which is the old town, you're going to feel like you stepped back into a 1950s movie. They have preserved these cars. And again, so in Cuba, they don't have they can't just go to the auto shop and get, we need a new part here, we need a new part there. No, they have to build almost everything there. If they didn't get it from Russia, they didn't have it. So I always say they can pretty much fix anything with a bottle of nail polish, which is also something they have to get on the black market. Everything that they acquire there, if they didn't get it from Russia, they're getting it from the black market. So it's very interesting and fascinating to know that mechanics have kept these beautiful cars in motion for as long as they have. And we are going to get to ride in them a couple of times during the week. So get ready. And these are, talk about the Instagram moments, right? This particular square that the cars are that you see right now is Revolution Square. And that's where you're going to learn about the key players in the revolution. On the right, you have Castro. On the left is Che Guevara. And of course, like I said, the third one was Cienfuegos. And these were the three fathers of the revolution. They plotted, they masterminded. Che's from Argentina, Castro's Cuban. They were in Mexico. They came over they had a boat. They infiltrated in the south near Santiago, and they lived in the jungles, and they plotted this, and they took over the government January 1st of 1959. So you'll hear a lot about that. And that was the turning stone for the Cuba that we know today. Next up is the Tropicana. Many of you know about the famous Tropicana. You've seen it in movies. This cabaret show started in 1939. It's a famous open air nightclub with a tropical garden. It's on a beautiful estate. And I'm not going to tell you anything about the show because you have to see it for yourself. And it gets better and better with each scene to a final crescendo. And it's just an amazing thing to see. We are going to be there for New Year's Eve on the December trip. So for those of you on the December vacation with us, this is going to be your New Year's celebration. And of course, for those of you who join us in March, we will do it as well. And it will be no less spectacular. But what a great way to understand the culture. The show that they put on is it's a Cuban cultural show. So they're describing and dancing out the culture of Cuba during the show. And yes, there's bongos and male, female dancers. They come into the audience. It's just phenomenal. And I don't think that many of you, even in Las Vegas, they have beautiful shows, but this one is, I think, even better than what you see in Las Vegas. So this is our itinerary in a nutshell. We're going to be 4 nights in Havana. We will then take a day of those 4 and drive out to Viñales. We will also then, on that 5th day, leave Havana, drive to Trinidad via Cienfuegos. And I'm going to share some of the highlights of all of those. But first, I want to show you a nice little video of Havana. How cool is that, right? So, like I said, you're going to feel like you're in an old movie. That's the old center. It's right on the water with old colonial buildings, and everything is walkable. There's no cars inside the downtown or the old Havana area. This is on the outside, a little bit in the cruise port there. So just fascinating. On the right-hand side, this is the famous Malecón. So we're facing the Caribbean right here, and this is the cruise port. We don't have any cruises traveling to Cuba right now. So again, the only way to visit would be to do a land program like we're doing. One of the other highlights is, there's many. This is the Capitol building here on the left-hand side, and you can see it looks very much like our Capitol. They definitely copied it. Last time I was there, it was under construction. Perhaps while you're there this time, you're going to be able to see it fully rehabbed, and it'll look beautiful. So it's great for pictures. On the right-hand side, this is, who knows? Well, I've got you guys on mute. So there's a couple of famous drinks in Cuba. And the one of them is, well, if you want to type it in the chat box, I would love to hear if anybody can guess what kind of drink this is. I'll give you just a second. It is the famous mojito. And so, by the way, because of the lack of resources in Cuba, and Carla, our guide, who I'm going to introduce you to in a minute, will talk to you about this. The first day she will do a talk about the economy and the economic situation, and everything that you've heard about the stores that they go into and shop has almost nothing. They are on rations still. The Cuban citizens themselves are on a ration program that was implemented in 1959, and they are still living on that. So when they go to the store, there might only be 6 or 7 items on the shelves. And so this is what they did. They make rum because they have the sugar cane. They made rum, and they were growing mint. And that's pretty much what what this drink is made out of, the famous mojito. So we're going to take you to Bodeguita del Medio, which is a famous place. Hemingway used to go there. He enjoyed having his mojitos at Bodeguito. And at this time, I'm going to introduce you to Carla. She's our leader for you while you're in Cuba. And she is Cuban. She lives there. She's 100% Cuban. And what a beautiful, knowledgeable. She actually studied law. She has an international law degree. And as I was mentioning, in Cuba, because of the communist state, they have a stipend that they would earn. So whether you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, a teacher, a musician, everybody earns the same $30 a month. And then they get their rations for the month. So she's going to talk to you about all of these things, and you'll learn about that while you're in Cuba, because it's so different than the world that we know. So let me introduce you to Carla. Okay, guys, and not only is that Carla, our guide, but that music is everywhere in Cuba. I have never met so many talented musicians in one place in my entire life. Again, they go to university for music, and everybody who goes to university in Cuba, the country, you know, it's paid for, their education is paid for, but they have to qualify. So when you're a musician in Cuba, that you're likely very well educated in your music area. So it's everywhere you go. You're going to learn how to dance salsa. You're going to drink mojitos. You're going to have daiquiris, which is the other famous drink there. And you're going to have the Cuba Libre. So get ready, get your dancing shoes on, because music is a very big part of Cuban culture. So is creativity. Again, the Cuban people are just extremely creative. And this place that we're going to take you is called Fusterlandia. Mr. Fuster was an artist, and he was living in this very old fishing village that was a little bit depressed at the time. The economy wasn't that great. I mean, it's not that great, but it was even worse in those days. It was in the early 70s, and he started by putting these mosaics up on his own home, and now the whole neighborhood is one giant mosaic. So you're going to get to see this yourselves. Take some pictures. This is one of our past travelers. She bought a piece of artwork there, and that's a great place to do souvenir shopping. Now, this little picture I just want to share with you, the little children that are always in their school uniforms, always with a smile on their face and ready to say hello and talk. And the people of Cuba are just incredibly friendly. And I also found during all of my visits there, almost no crime. Unfortunately, because the society has so many strict laws, and the punishment is great if you get caught doing anything in Cuba. So everybody minds their P's and Q's. They're very obedient, but that does make it for a very safe place for anybody who's going to visit that country. Look, and if you go to Cuba, we have some recommended items if you want to bring things to the kids, to the families. That's always a wonderful way to, give your thanks for your visit to their country. They definitely can use help in many, many areas. One of the things we like to bring are musical instrument supplies, like guitar strings or reeds for windwood instruments, clothing, lotions, all kinds of things. And we'll fill you in on that when you travel with us. So here is our itinerary. We're going to start in La Habana, which is in the upper left-hand corner. You see the big circle here. It says La Habana. We're all going to fly in here. And then we're going to make our way one of the days over to the left-hand side where you see the red X and the word Viñales. After our 4 nights in La Habana, we're going to head southeast. We're going to pass through Cienfuegos and end up in Trinidad, which we're going to stay for 3 nights. And our vacation will end very early in the morning, and we will go back to Havana or La Habana. So that's the map of Cuba. You guys can see the Bahamas is up above it. Jamaica's down below. There's the Cayman Islands. Puerto Rico and Haiti are over to the east. So it's very close to us and very near to us, right just south of the United States in the Caribbean Sea. So the day we go to Viñales, so we're in Cuba. I showed you some of the highlights that we'll be doing there. The day we go to Viñales is unbelievable. It is one of the most scenic locations in all of the country. And it's a national park, and it's the heartland of Cuban tobacco farming. So what do you think we're going to see when we go to Viñales? Of course, we're going to learn how the Cubans make their famous cigars, and everybody wants to know that. You want to smoke them, and you can take them home. They're not even limited at this current time as long as you're bringing in your own personal supply. So this is one of the tobacco farmers right now. He's actually making a cigar using the tobacco. So it's the best of the best. And I tried it, so I can tell you guys it was good. And I'm sure you're going to want to bring some home to friends and family, because everybody wants a Cuban, which, by the way, you can't get anywhere here in the United States unless you bring it in from Cuba. So it'll be a very special souvenir. Also, while we're in Viñales, we're going to enjoy the scenery, the tobacco farms. We're going to have a beautiful lunch, and we will have a horseback ride. And if you're not a horseback rider, don't worry, because we have an option for you of a wine taste and a goat cheese tasting. So you'll have a choice there, and Carla will, help you make your decision. You have a couple of hours ride from Havana to Viñales. So on the way, she'll chat with you and find out where your interests lie. But for those of you who like to ride horseback, think about, you'll feel like I have a girl that used to work here, and she was Cuban also, and she said, "My God, I would go back and visit my family, and I would ride the horse from house to house, and everybody wanted me to drink a cup of coffee because that's the tradition there, right? And their coffee is strong." So she said, by the end of the day, I was like like this because she was drinking so much coffee, but she did do it by horseback, which I thought was very fascinating. So for any of you who are interested in the horseback riding, that'll be available to you. The rest of you who don't, you can do the wine and the cheese tasting. So it's going to be an excellent cultural immersion in the middle of the country. So back to our map. We're going to finish our stay in La Habana, and now we're going to head down to Cienfuegos, which is right in the southern section of the country. And Cienfuegos was really an affluent city in its day, which was like the mid 1800s, right? And why? Because it was an enormous agricultural region, and they were farming sugarcane, mangoes, tobacco, coffee, all of the things that everybody wanted at that time period. And it was just a super fertile region. So they were prospering, and, Europeans were coming to Cuba to create enterprise, right? And to take advantage, profit by the farming and the products that they were able to get from the Caribbean. So they were coming down here. Everybody knows that the Spaniards and the Portuguese sent their conquistadors and their explorers, and the reason why was that they were finding things that they didn't have in Europe, and so they were bringing back these goods to Europe. And so they were very savvy business people, and they took residence in Cuba, and they did their business. And here was one of the homes of a very famous Italian, a very wealthy Italian man. It's called the Valley Palace, and we are going to visit that during our stop in Cienfuegos. And Cienfuegos, the town itself, was actually founded by a French immigrant. And so you're going to see a lot of French influence in the architecture. Now, this one looks quite Moorish to me, but when you walk around the main square, you'll have some time to walk around, have a drink, have a coffee. There's some shops. I found a beautiful music shop while I was there and got some CDs of the famous musicians of Cuba. So I think you're going to really enjoy your stop in Cienfuegos. And of course, Cienfuegos is just a stop on our way to Trinidad from Havana. And that's where we're going to spend the following 3 nights on either of the trips. Here's an overview. Again, a very scenic and beautiful location. Now, what's unique about Trinidad is that it was pretty isolated for 100 years, from 1850 to 1950. So it's completely restored colonial town. And again, so this just really, it's very interesting to wonder what the future of Cuba will be. And right now, as a visitor, you do benefit from going to these places that, of course, are visited, but they've been so well preserved that you feel like you're back in time. So Trinidad was a major trade center for sugar and slaves. So when you go to Cuba, you're going to see different parts of the culture and the influences. So there was a great slave trade. So these are African folks that were brought to Cuba that are Cuban. So you have this African influence, and then you got the European influence, and then you have the Latin Hispanic influence. So you've got 3 cultures that have melded together, and it's kind of a combination of religions, although for so long, of course, in a communist society, religion is not supported. In fact, it's usually restricted or forbidden. Today, they are able to practice, but it's under very strict observations. And so you'll hear music, and you'll eat cuisines, and you'll get to understand the melting of these three cultures together. And I think that's what also makes Cuba so fascinating. So Trinidad is literally unchanged. You guys are going to spend the 3 days there. These are some of the sites that you'll see on the left-hand side here. That's the Municipal Museum. In the upper right-hand corner, those are some of our travelers last time. And I think Sally is in that picture, and she's coming with us again in December. She's a dancer. She loves the salsa dance, and she had a great time on this last trip. Even despite some of the challenges, which I'll take a minute just to say that when you go to Cuba, if I didn't say it already, it's a communist country, right? We're invited to visit, and we are not in the USA. So we don't have the same kind of rights that we would have here at home. And so we have to be very respectful and obedient of what we're doing in the country. And again, because of the lack of resources, these guys had an issue with one of their cars. I think they got a little flat tire or something on the way down, but they made lemonade out of lemons. One of the ladies had rum, the other one had Coke, and they made rum and Cokes while they waited for the driver to fix the car. So they had a really good time. And that's what you have to do. You have to roll with the punches in Cuba. And sometimes you're going to run into a scenario where the lack of supplies may affect what we expected. And so we take it in stride and we move on to the next episode, because it is Cuba. We're so fortunate here. And I think that's one of the things that you will prize when you go home, is how comfortable we have it compared to the people that are living in Cuba. So this is some glimpses of Trinidad, or Trinidad, and we're going to be salsa dancing. So while in Havana we have a night, we're going to do a salsa lesson. We're going to do it again in Trinidad. We're going to go to a dance hall there. And I talked about the music a little bit earlier, but you can't have salsa if you don't have the salsa music. So these musicians are everywhere. You saw I couldn't help moving myself a little bit when we heard the video a little bit earlier. Even if you don't know how to dance, give it a shot. Nobody's looking at your feet, and you're going to I challenge you to not move when the music starts. So I think that's one of the most enjoyable things, and not something to be nervous about, but just to be open and try something new. Salsa is a very interesting dance. It's a fusion of all those styles that I was talking about earlier: Caribbean, like cha-cha-cha, rumba, mambo, all of them combined, and a little bit of that African influence. So we'll teach you the basics, so you're not feeling like two left feet. And I say let's go for it. Let's talk about the food a little bit. One of my favorites, lots of lobster in Cuba, guys. And I'm sure that all of our programs include every meal. So when you get to Cuba, there's really nothing you're going to have to buy, because we've included all your tours, all your dinners. And we included at least a drink with every dinner. So you can get a chance to try everything. So on the left-hand side, that's a little piece of lobster. In the middle, this is the most famous. It's called ropa vieja. It's the most famous dish in Cuba. That's pork on the left, and it's rice and beans and sweet plantains. On the bottom right, they're called croquettes. So those are ham and cheese croquettes. They're super yummy. In the middle is a shrimp with garlic sauce. And on the left is arroz con pollo, which is chicken and rice. So there's a little bit of something for everyone. And Carla will take care of any of your needs or any of your dietary restrictions. I mean, if you have them, let us know in advance. I don't anticipate any problems, because there's a variety of things that you are able to eat. If you don't eat seafood, we have chicken and pork. So a little bit of everything within the means of what's available that week in Cuba. The delicious drinks. So on the left, you've got the Havana, and I did this on purpose because Havana Club is the main rum in Cuba, and it is delicious. And just the 7-year, it's a dark rum, 7-year. They have more aged rums, but the 7-year is just absolutely delicious. And you put that in a Cuba Libre, which is rum and Coke. Up above is the mojito, and then down below is the daiquiri. So there's another bar in Havana that I think you guys should go to. It's called La Floridita, and that was also visited by Hemingway. That's supposedly where he went to get his daiquiris. So now that I've got you guys hungry and you're dancing a little bit in your seats and looking forward to this, I'm going to talk about some of the requirements to go to Cuba. So, Cuba, again, it's a communist. It's one of the only existing single party socialist states right now. So we want to make sure that we, button up, cross our T's, dot our I's, because what they say goes. It's authoritarian, and political opposition is not permitted. You guys might remember a couple of years ago, there were some movement in La Havana by the locals, and it's not taken well. So this is not the USA, and we've got to abide by what's required for us to visit. And once we do that, it's easy. So easy. Passport valid for 6 months after return. So if you're going in December, so that means your passport has to be good till June. If you go in March, October, November, and a return airline ticket. These are easy peasy things I think everybody would have. The visa, which is the support of the Cuban people, we are including it in our package. So when you sign up, we send you an email with all of the steps to prepare for your trip. And we have a form that you fill out that declares that you're traveling in support of the Cuban people, and then we purchase the visa for you. We have a travel affidavit. That's what I just mentioned. You sign off on that. You have to have travel insurance. Whether you purchase it from us or your favorite travel insurance company, no problem. You just let them know you're going to Cuba. There's a few extra steps that they take to issue that policy, but not a problem, and it is mandatory. You have to have a planned itinerary, engaging with locals at least 6 hours daily. So our itinerary does follow that guideline. We have you busy every day, and you're going to love all of it. And it could be different from the December trip to the March trip, depending on what some of the things are that we're able to book for our members. We could meet a musician, we could meet a dancer, we could meet a politician, we could meet a famous baseball player, all kinds of different personalities that we will engage with while we're in our tour with the locals in Cuba. And then you just keep your receipts for anything. Obviously, we're including almost everything. So it would be your invoice and your itinerary from Singles Travel International. We are including all of your accommodations for the 7 nights, your visa, all of your breakfast, lunches, and dinners. We've got a complimentary drink with every meal, your full-time schedule, 2 events where we're taking you in classic car, and countless fun times with salsa dancing and live Cuban music. So lots of, and all your entrance fees are included for all of the museums and the palace that I showed you in Cienfuegos. Everything is all included. So you may just purchase some gifts while you're there for yourself, some souvenirs, and of course, gratuities to Carla, our concierge, are recommended, and we'll tell you about that when you make your reservation. Gratuities with Singles Travel International and our concierges are always optional. We want to earn that. All of them are very dedicated to serving our members and making sure they have an awesome time. And so you tip them based on their service. And I can assure you that they're going to go to the ends of the earth to make you feel welcome and happy. Some travel tips. On money, first of all, I put TBA here, but right now, currently, because this changes, the Cubans used to have two currencies, now they have one. And we had to exchange our money for their currency, but now US dollars and euros are accepted. So for us coming from the USA, they will accept US dollars. Very few credit cards. So it's mostly cash, but because everything's included, you don't need a lot. I would say probably around 300 USD in cash, depending on your spending habits. But again, it's there's not a lot of opportunity to buy lots of things there, and everything is very reasonable. Phones, it's calling cards, or now a new, they have SIM cards that you're able to purchase. They come in $30 increments for a data package. Previously, you couldn't get any internet, but now you can do that for both iPhone and Android, and Carla will help you with that when you get there. So you don't have to do anything beforehand, but your phone will not work in Cuba. So that's something that you want to prepare your family to understand, that you won't be easily in contact. But we will give you Carla's information on WhatsApp, so she can be reached at any time. Safety, very safe. Everywhere we're taking you, not to worry. And as I mentioned earlier, very, very low crime in Cuba. It's not a place you have to worry. Water, everywhere we're taking you, the water will be okay. We're definitely serving you bottled water. In your accommodations, you would still want to drink the bottled water, not water from the tap. The attire, just kind of comfortable, cool, whether you're going in December or March. It's a tropical location, so it's going to be nice and warm for those of you for coming from anywhere in the country. In both December and March, it'll be a great getaway. And of course, the dress up for the Tropicana, whether New Year's Eve or March, that'll be a dressy evening. And of course, if you want to participate in something humanitarian, it is very, very welcome. And if you don't, that's of course okay too. This is not something that we're asking for. Nobody's asking for it, but we know from our experience how welcome it is when you when you bring these things for them, because they are in great need. So premium membership. When you are a premium member here with Singles Travel International, you're always going to save on your own space. We have annual members and lifetime memberships, and it always pays. So in this particular case, you're going to save several $100s on your own room. Plus, we're throwing in the Tropicana for premium members. If you're not a premium member, you will pay extra for the Tropicana experience. When you are a premium member, not only do you get discounts on your vacations, but you're the first to know when we have a new trip. So we give you a 48-hour head start. When we get a really good deal from one of the cruise lines or one of the tour companies, we send an email to all of the premium members first. We let them know it's coming the next day, and then they get 24 hours before the rest of our community of 25,000 find out about the new trip. So if there is a deal and it's limited, they get first, premium members get first dibs. And any last minute deals, if we have a cancellation and it's close in, we send an email to all the premium members, and sometimes it's free. Not always, but sometimes it is, because we've got the space, we're going, it's paid for, maybe the member has insurance, and so everything's paid for, and we send it out to the premium members, and you get to go on a trip for a fraction of the price. And then we also, if we have any extra perks like upgrades or onboard credits or any little gifts, anything that we get from the vendors on that trip, it goes to the premium members. So it really pays to get that premium membership, and it's available every time you check out for every trip that you book on our website. And there's a difference when you travel with us. We, first of all, only cater to singles, not even unhitched people, like everybody. I mean, actually, not even people who are married who don't travel together. Everybody in our community is not married. We're not matchmaking, but it makes it so nice to get on a trip and to know everybody's single. You can connect with them, right? They're in your age range. Maybe they've been divorced or they've lost their spouse. And so it's a really great way for you to just grow as an individual, to be around people that understand you and have more in common with you. And then we have our concierge, our dedicated, caring, professional, friendly concierge team who really do care. And then that's the key. Many people will say the number one thing that they remember about their vacation is the other people. And all of the reviews talk about our concierges. They never take a break. And it's not because they're forced to do it. I think they genuinely enjoy the company of the singles and they love to take care of you. Singles events throughout the entire itinerary, and a dedicated team here at the office, again, with that same caring attitude. We want to make sure that our singles are feeling good, that they try new things, that they feel in a safe environment with other people like them. And we've been doing this for 30 years. So I don't think we would be here this long if we weren't doing the right thing for our members. And I just can't wait to share more of Cuba with you. And so if you're ready to go, all you have to do is go to our website, singlestravelintl.com, to reserve your space online, and or call us so we can try to help you with that. And that's it. It's as simple as that. So if you're watching us on YouTube, thanks for joining. We can't wait to meet you in person. And we're just going to stop our video now for some questions and answers for the folks who are here in the room tonight. So have a great evening, and we can't wait to meet you.